Hello, welcome. Just take you through the agenda. We've only got about 30 minutes for this session, so we'll do a few introductions on who we are. I'll then hand over to my colleague who will talk through a bit about financial auditing, just a bit about the processes, introducing the concepts, and then talk about some of the challenges. We'll then go on to talk about how we approach that when we're designing and building solutions, the benefits of the approach, and then I'll hand back to me and I'll talk through technical implementation. What does that typically look like? And then we'll suggest some next steps for you. First one, there's myself, Al McEwan. I'm a principal consultant with Thorogood. Joining me today with the session is my colleague Som. We are Thorogood associates, so for those who are not yet familiar with us, we are specialists in data engineering, data science and visualization. We focus a lot on customers' business, so by understanding the business, we can bring to that our knowledge and understanding of analytics and how technological solutions can help to solve some of those business challenges and business focuses. We operate globally. We're typically working with Fortune 500 enterprise level customers, so we're very familiar with what it takes to design and develop and fit solutions into those types of organizations. We're relatively technology agnostic. We tend to be more focused on what our customers are interested in. So we work with a spread of technologies and we partner with many of those. I'm going to hand across now to my colleague Som, who will take us through a bit about the financial auditing processes.
Hello, everyone. Over the next 10-15 minutes, I will be briefly walking you through on how digital transformation and analytics is transforming the audit ecosystem. With increase in scale and size of organizations, there is an increase in complexity associated with financial reporting, and auditing has become more important in today's world than it has ever been before. Audits are critical processes for most of the organizations to evaluate effectiveness of its controls, mitigate risks, and to ensure proper governance is followed. Control assessments help determine whether the controls are fulfilling their purpose and whether sufficient for risk mitigation. With organizations rapidly expanding their business and failure to evaluate and manage risk could have serious repercussions in organizations' reputation and their growth visions. It is therefore very important to spot early signs of risks in relation to business failure. Audits are required to ensure you're complying with not only organizational standards, but also industry and ISO standards. With consistent and continuous audits, organizations can be better prepared to quickly identify their gaps, thereby improving their overall efficiency. There are many business processes involved in organization. We will now look into some of the most common and important financial business processes reviewed as a part of audit. Source to pay is a set of business processes that involve supplier selection strategy, purchases processes associated with suppliers and their corresponding payments. Order to cash is a set of business processes that involves receiving and fulfilling customer requests for goods and services and their associated billing. Record to report, on the other hand, is a set of business processes that involves general ledger accounting, closing of general ledger accounts, consolidation of the accounts, and finally reporting profit and loss statements, balance sheets, and performance reporting, which are all required as a part of internal, external, and regulatory reporting purposes. We have asset accounting, which involves auditing of fixed assets, their depreciations, their valuations, write-downs, contracts, and leases. So let's now look into source to pay as a business process. So with source to pay as a business process, the life cycle of source to pay involves strategic sourcing, contract and pricing associated with suppliers, purchase requisitions, purchase approval, goods receipt, invoice receipt, and payments associated with the suppliers. Despite the level of automation which includes ERP tools, source to pay is a process to watch out for frauds, money leakages, the breaches, and efficiency in processes such as purchase spends that are being made against suppliers without contracts in place, favoring certain suppliers to make advance payments even before the goods are received, or in certain cases, even making the payments well ahead of the due date, which could impact companies' cash flow. It also involves, identification of fraudulent duplicate invoices, purchases which have huge price variances, and purchases made without purchase orders in place, and also bypassing of purchases without the right approval workflow. Since this is one of the most critical business processes which involves huge cash flow, visibility into entire life cycle of a transaction from vendor selection to final invoice generation and payments becomes a challenge for businesses. Moving on, we have order to cash, and which involves order management, credit management, order fulfillment, customer invoicing, accounts receivable, and payments. Order to cash deals with financial records from sales order made to customer until the delivery of the items. It deals with data like customer information, blocked and backlogged deliveries, credit line extended to certain customers, and discounted provided to them. Auditing helps determine which customers are inactive and whether there are fraudulent transactions like sales made to inactive or dormant customers. Certain customers being favored for discounts and rebates, and deliveries being blocked without proper channels or made without proper sales orders and bills. We will now look into some of the key challenges associated with conventional audit processes. Until recent times, internal audits were conducted manually and required an immense amount of effort and resources. Organizations have hundreds of controls and standards to audit across different business processes. Modern day problem requires digital and automated solutions. As a part of organizations' digital transformation initiatives, we are noticing that clients are adopting multiple specialized ERP and financial softwares to cater to their vendor management, customer management, asset and inventory management tools, and also purchase requisition and e-invoicing to help optimize their business operations. Although increased adoption of specialized tools has significantly improved the business processes and efficiency, it has also resulted in management of data across multiple softwares, data residing or spread across multiple systems. And also it increases the dependency on multiple teams to manage and maintain these softwares. There's also a huge influx of data transactions which is generated out of this system, which eventually leaves auditors with millions of transactions to audit. When the auditors are left with millions of transactions to audit and not adequate tools available at their disposal to surface key insight, it leaves them with no other option but rather to perform audits on just sample data, which further impacts the quality of the audits being performed and also not being able to effectively utilize or harness the power of the data availability that their digital applications are generating. With massively increasing data, you need modern solutions that can help you tap into key insights and can empower you to be able to spot early signs of warnings to help you mitigate the risks. There is a growing desire for companies to leverage the latest technology platforms and to manage and enhance their auditing report insights and requirements. So our approach to this particular problem, what do we do about it? We have been specializing in data engineering and analytics for many years, and therefore we know the most successful applications are the ones that focus on business goals and then use technology to enable and unlock opportunities. This is exactly what the approach we took here. Rather than just treating this as an IT exercise, we made sure that we understand what the businesses are trying to achieve. We often see clients struggle to keep up their infrastructure and application workloads with overly increasing dynamic nature of their businesses. They either end up with over-provisioning of infrastructure needs, which significantly increases their cost, or end up under-provisioning, which leads to significant delay in keeping up with the demand with scalability of infrastructure and applications. Adoption of cloud helps you solve this problem. It provides scalability for your data storage and processing and reduction in overheads of IT infrastructure costs. You can now be less worried about infrastructure sizing and maintenance and can focus more on application and business value. Adoption of cloud platforms open up opportunity to leverage data lakes. What are data lakes? Data lakes are virtually infinite and cheap storage solutions in cloud. Data lakes helps you in harmonizing the data, which is spread across multiple systems all into one place. It can be modeled and designed to act as a single version of your truth for all your analytical applications, thereby increasing consistency of insights reported across the organization. It also provides fast, easy, and secure way to access and process your data. With data now standardized into one location in the form of data lake, it becomes easy to access and combine multiple data sets to enable cross-functional reporting. Design the model in such a way that it enables you to scale to future needs. It meets the business goals and needs in terms of what KPIs are required, what metrics would help the business. And also one of the key points to note is how do you design for performance? Ensure you only bring in data that is required and not try to overload your data models with huge volumes of data. And this becomes a very important design consideration. Also, with respect to interactivity across enable interactivity across multiple data sets. And there are multiple tools that are currently available which can be leveraged to be able to model big data, which we'll be covering and talking about as a part of this particular webcast. But then have a concept called iterative dashboard methodology. So with iterative dashboard methodology, it's very often, the business tends to struggle to come up with a big picture on the business requirements. It takes a long time to translate and to wait for the big picture to materialize. There are even scenarios where, the requirements get misinterpreted, end up building a solution which takes a lot of time and effort. In order to avoid these common problems, you can start off with a minimum viable product and have a continuous feedback, the ability to be able to view how the data surfaces. It gives them more time to digest it and to be able to provide feedbacks which would add more value to them rather than having to wait for the entire product to be ready and then realizing there are big deviations with respect to the solution built. So it increases the efficiency in the overall operations. And then we have DevOps practices. So Agile and DevOps practices have been some of the latest methodologies that are being followed by most of the organizations. It increases the agility of release and reduces the change management process. With automated testing functionalities and continuous deployment and integration processes, you have better control over your code and release management. Now let's look into some of the benefits of smart financial audit systems. One of the biggest advantage is its operational efficiency. But how can you achieve this operational efficiency? One thing is we're automating the report generation. It has a drastic reduction in time, and also it gives you high consistency and accurate insights, which often when there is a lot of manual processes involved, it becomes error prone. So with automation, you kind of reduce time, you increase the accuracy as well as consistency. One of the biggest advantage with adopting a cloud-based strategy is the reduction of infrastructure overheads. There is a lot of manual effort, as we spoke about, which cloud tries to reduce, which is basically you don't need to manage your infrastructure, you need to be worried about the quick scalability or availability. Most of it is something that is taken care by your cloud providers. And it also, cloud options do come with as pay-as-you-go services. This offers you the advantages where you only pay for the computational and storage that you use. It also gives you the capability to be able to scale only during your peak workload duration, thereby helps you or gives you the ability to process massive volumes of data at a very low cost. Value addition activities, within the same amount of time, instead of spending time on mundane tasks, the focus can now be more on taking strategic insights. This frees up time for the auditors to be able to perform more continuous and timely audits, which would benefit the organization. In recent times, we've seen, especially with COVID, unprecedented times with COVID, where there has been organizations and countries which have moved into lockdown, wherein it became very hard for someone to monitor the operations happening globally across their organizations. So with having automated, highly robust systems, it gives you the flexibility to be able to audit remotely from any part of the world. Coming to analytics, it helps you build a robust and scalable silos and warehouse for your audit information. It helps you deep dive into massive data sets, deliver smaller subset of high value data for auditors to be able to evaluate, improve both audit quality as well as value of business insights an auditor is able to deliver. I will hand over it to my colleague Al, who will be further walking us through the technical implementation of how this can be achieved.
Right, there we go. Let's talk a bit about the technical implementation. So Som's referred to the cloud. We've used the cloud for most of our solutions these days. Most organizations have got to the stage where they understand and they trust and they see the benefits of cloud-based solutions. what we're presenting here, and probably what I'll talk through more, is an Azure example, an example of using Microsoft Azure cloud technologies to implement these types of solutions. And what I'm putting up on screen is an example architecture. This is kind of a bit of a template, almost our starting point, and then we look to how that fits within particular customers' needs and scenario. And what we're showing here is end-to-end. So some of the typical systems on the right-hand side where you might store and get your financial data from, through the cloud and all the way out to the reporting solution on the right-hand side. And as Som has referred to, we automate the end-to-end. We certainly look to fully automate that end-to-end solution such that the business and the people managing the solutions don't have to touch this. It just runs on a daily or weekly or monthly, whatever your schedule is. So data in from the right-hand side, Microsoft Azure's solution is Data Factory for ingestion of data. Many companies have their own solutions, and therefore using SAP BODs, if that's a term you're familiar with, using Informatica, using other tools to ingest the data to a data lake is absolutely appropriate, and in some cases is more appropriate, works more effectively. But there are Microsoft-based solutions that can do that data ingestion. And then we're into the data lake. We're really looking to bring the data into the data lake in its rawest form so that we don't have to go back, so that we can also take snapshots. A lot of the work we do takes the snapshot of a closing day's position or a closing period's position, and we can store today's, yesterday's, last month's, last year's. We can store those positions within the data lake because storage is cheap. As Tom mentioned, virtually unlimited storage potential. To be able to then do change data capture, to understand the differences, perhaps the change comes from the system, but if it doesn't, then we can do change data capture. And that snapshotting is really important, really valuable, so you can see where those changes are, see what's perhaps, explore what's driving those changes. Once the data lands in the data lake, we have cloud-based tools to do the data processing. We often use Data Factory to do the data orchestration, and more Data Factory can do the data processing as well. And then we're using Databricks to do the data processing. And again, there are other tools, but we find Databricks with its Spark-based distributed processing is incredibly fast, incredibly flexible to do that data processing. And we may store snapshots of data on the way. We may store some of those transformational stages. But what we're really looking is to get to that output, to fully process our data so that it's ready for output on the right-hand side, ready for reporting. And then we use tools on the right-hand side then to do the data modeling, perhaps within Synapse Analytics, and reporting, perhaps within tools like Power BI and Tableau, Qlik, MicroStrategy. There are many different tools you can use to do that reporting. So we're really looking to get to that fully end-to-end, fully automated model. The ability to store multiple snapshots, multiple copies, to do comparisons and transformations in the data lake, and we just store things when we need to so that we can then do those comparisons. What was today's position versus last month or 3 periods ago, etc., seeing what the trends of the data are. Som's talked a bit about the scalability. Well, the ability to scale up in data processing, to scale back down again, so that you're just using the tools for the workload, scaling up and scaling back down to be able to manage those costs. If you need extra infrastructure to perhaps even test something out, you want to innovate, test a scenario, is that going to be something that's effective? We can implement infrastructure instantly rather than the idea of having to purchase a server and commit to server costs over the next X number of years. We can just instantly say, I would like a new processing server. I don't want it 3 months' time or 1 month's time or a day's time. I'm going to delete that again. And therefore, I'm just using the cost when I need to. So the ability to try something out and innovate is just massively enabled through this type of architecture. Som's talked about the processing power and scale. We can scale up and scale down as necessary. We're not reliant on spreadsheets and desktop. And yes, we can bring some of that into it. End users like to have things on their desktop. They like to be able to download data when they need to. So I don't think we're, dare I say, ever going to take that away from users. But if we can move the needle, if we can change the need to download to reduce it, it minimizes the risks of firstly, data being downloaded, and it minimizes some of the challenges with people doing things in their own silo on their desktop and other people doing common things as well. So the cloud is a very good platform at being able to enable that collaboration and sharing of results and information. As well as an end-to-end processing capability, we have all sorts of ability to do monitoring. When things fail, if things fail, we can put alerts in place. So it's the managers, the monitors, the administrators of this only need to come in and do something when they're called upon, rather than them having to monitor it and watch it constantly and make sure these things are running appropriately. The reporting is a really strong capability, using a whole bunch of tools that, with so many more opportunities to store and manage snapshots and versions of data and different slices of data, then the deep dive analytical capability is really strong. And beyond that, we're seeing a lot of organizations move into much more of a self-serve capability. So by putting tools like Tableau and Power BI on the front end of your reporting data models means that the business can explore themselves. You can deliver them the insights they need, and from there they can then explore and drill up and drill down. So that's one reference architecture within a Microsoft version of a data lake. We have here on this slide almost exactly the same, because AWS has very, very similar capabilities, just as strong as Azure. That Azure was just an example. I won't talk through this from an end-to-end and all the components perspective, but we can do exactly the same really within AWS, and Google Cloud Platform enables the same as well. I won't talk through those. So you're not tied to a specific cloud platform provider. You've got multiple to choose from. So hopefully that gives you some examples of how this can be implemented. And I'll talk through now what some of your next steps might be, just to plant some seeds in your mind. Firstly, assess where you are now. What is important in your landscape? What are you struggling with in your landscape? What are the gaps? Because that helps us to focus, or helps you to focus on, why would you move to the cloud? What are you getting from it? Let's really understand the business benefits of the cloud-based solution and focus on those when you're designing and implementing the cloud-based solutions. Wherever you are in your landscape, wherever you are in your evolution, our suggestion is just to get started, just try something. And that brings in the next point really, is proof of concept. It's very quick to get started. A platform, to get started implementation, it can take some time to think about your security and controls and governance and so on. Those things can take a while, but just getting started with something that can provide some initiative to prove that this is a really valuable exercise can be very quick. So to put a proof of concept implementation architecture in place can be very quick to get that going and just allow you to explore and see what works for you. So proof of concept is usually a very good way to go. There are plenty of pitfalls. This type of environment we've been working with for, I'm going to say, almost probably 5 years now. So there is plenty of learning to be had. There are plenty of pitfalls. So we certainly recommend that you get a really good start, leverage that expertise. Of course, you can start on your own and learn from scratch, but certainly makes sense, we think, to start from a point that's further up in that cycle. The last point there really is, think beyond today's problems. It takes something to pick your head up and think about, where are you going within your environment? How do you pick your head up from my day-to-day challenge, next week's, next month? What do I have to deliver? What are the reports I have to get out? What are the challenges with those? Who's calling on something? Take something to pick your head up from that and get to look at, what could it look like? What could this environment look like? How could I simplify this for myself? How could I enable more people to do more for themselves, therefore enabling less of a call on IT or whoever's delivering those reports for you? So think beyond today's problems, just try it, just get started, leverage expertise, and then the sky's your limit. I hope today's session was useful. Relatively quick session, but hope it was useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. My contact details, Som's contact details are on screen now. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day. Thank you.